Welcome to the video, guys. You will remember last year when we went to the election and who you voted for, because it seems the Tory party might be a little bit confused on what they're supposed to be doing now. There are reports roaming around that the Conservatives are actually considering something you would expect from Labour, like we all voted for Labour last year and secretly Jeremy Corbyn is in government. This you might already know about, but I felt I had to say something on the subject because it is just ludicrous. Now, you know when The Guardian talks about something and they're not critical when the government plans to do it, you should obviously consider that to be a very dangerous idea. I mean, this should all be borne out in the fact that The Guardian here are not even that concerned by it and instead seem to be fairly happy. They are actually giving a neutral position on a government policy which should concern everyone, I think you would agree. They are headlining, Sunak considers £500 vouchers for all UK adults to spend in COVID-hit firms. Chancellor urged to introduce a scheme that has jump-started other countries' blighted hospitality and retail sectors. Now, I am all for the hospitality and retail sector being pulled back from the brink, which is of course partly the fault of the Tory government, but at the end of the day they shouldn't be using taxpayer money to try and prop up the economy. That, in my opinion, is a false way of doing it, but we'll go through the article and see what they have to say. Radical plans to give all adults £500 and children £250 in vouchers to spend in sectors of the economy worst hit by the COVID crisis are being considered by the Treasury, which is just ludicrous. I actually cannot believe they are doing that. We are talking about something like £30 billion or more. This is just insanity. The proposals, drawn up by the Resolution Foundation think tank, which has recently held talks with the Treasury about its ideas, are aimed at kickstarting economic recovery by triggering a highly targeted surge in spending. Under the plans, the vouchers could only be spent in certain sectors, such as hospitality and face-to-face retail, as opposed to online. Yeah, because the online economy doesn't help the UK economy at all, does it? That just seems like nonsense. If you're going to give people £500 to spend in retail sectors, it should, at the end of the day, be absolutely anywhere. It does kind of make sense to help prop up both if you are going to do this, while I disagree completely with the notion of even doing it. As with last year's election campaign and Labour's promise of free this and that, we already know this is not free and instead will cost us an absolute fortune in the future. This, you have to remember, is a loan with interest. It's not something that the government can just pull out of their arsehole and give away to us. Eventually, it will have to be paid for, the chickens will come home to roost and there will be austerity, which, I'm sorry to say, will be the Conservative Party's fault, not the Labour Party, as we all know it usually is. The proposals are similar to successful schemes already used in China, Taiwan and Malta. In April, the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the COVID-19 outbreak is believed to have started, issued £500 million or £57 million in consumption vouchers for use in restaurants, shopping malls, convenience stores and cultural, sports and tourist venues, which I do have to say £57 million is pittance in the comparison to what would be needed to cover the UK's costs of £500 each person, plus 250 quid for every single child. These schemes they are touting as successful are nowhere near on the scale of the one that would be used here, which is obviously a disingenuous way to try and frame it like this is actually a good idea. Now, sure, I would love a free £500, as would anyone, but I know it won't be free and we will all have to pay it back, which is obviously not good, let me tell you. I've said it too many times. Anytime the government says something's free, what they really mean is taxpayer funded. Last night, ahead of a summer update, which I am still waiting for at the time of the recording, on the state of the stricken economy by the Chancellor Rishi Sunak on Wednesday, the Treasury refused to rule out introducing a similar scheme in the short or medium term. So, they are actually considering this. Like I've said, they are not definitely doing it, but the fact that they're even considering it is worrying for me, and certainly not what most, if not all of my viewers voted for when they went to the polls last year. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of this seems like Labour policies to me. We're going to have Jeremy Corbyn running around screaming that he won, and he was right if they actually go through with this. The Resolution Foundation says its idea would be a more effective way to jumpstart the economy than a temporary VAT cut or one-off cash gifts from the state to individuals, which have also been considered in Whitehall, though I actually think that would probably be a better idea, though I would still not be behind it because, as I've said, this money is not a gift. You are going to have to pay it back at some point in the future, or your children will. Economists say cash transfers into people's bank accounts would probably be stashed away into savings by many higher income households, while a VAT cut would do less for lower income families because they tend to spend more of their money on VAT exempt items or reduced or zero rate goods. The money could be allocated via vouchers or smart cards, and transactions could be made with the use of mobile phones. The think tank suggests a 1-year limit for spending the money, and that the scheme, which would cost the state around $30 billion, could be closed down in the event of a second wave of coronavirus. Now, the cost of $30 billion, I'm sure, is just a starting estimate. As with anything related to the government, we know that will end up skyrocketing. It will be $100 billion within a couple of months, much like the HS2 shit show. Sources involved in the discussion said the Treasury might balk at a £30 billion bill and opt for smaller sums if it takes up the idea, with the possibility that it could increase the value of the vouchers later if the scheme proved effective. Economic activity in the hospitality sector was down more than 90% in April, and there are fears that many sectors will continue to be badly affected while social distancing remains in place. Well, you might as well scrap it. The marches the other week have ended all credibility in any of this lockdown nonsense, but I love how they report that the hospitality sector was down more than 90% in April when none of us were fucking allowed out then. You complete and utter morons. What do you actually expect? James Smith, research director at Resolution Foundation, said social distancing has huge implications for firms in sectors like retail, hospitality, tourism and leisure that will last into the reopening phase. That is why the jobs of so many workers in these sectors are in the firing line. The Chancellor's recovery package on Wednesday should reflect this unique economic challenge. As well as setting out the biggest ever peacetime job support programme, the Chancellor should get Britain spending in places where it's needed most. A universal high street voucher scheme to be spent only in these sectors would kickstart demand in the right parts of our economy, boosting living standards and delivering targeted support to the businesses that needed the help the most. Yeah, I love how all these people run around talking about this and that, but don't have any way of actually being able to fund it. The Treasury declined to comment on the plans, saying the Chancellor would outline the next stage in our plan to secure Britain's recovery on Wednesday. That will include an extra $32 million for the National Careers Service, which ministers say will allow 250,000 more people to benefit from expert careers advice in their search for jobs. Sunak will say that the government will recruit hundreds more career advisors, meaning close to 270,000 more people will receive bespoke advice to support them in the world of work. What a complete and utter waste of money that actually is. How many of these government-funded schemes are actually profitable in the sense of getting people off benefits and into work? I would bet absolutely none of them. Instead, they cost us all an absolute fortune. The Tories really sound like Labour, bounding about all these amounts of money like they actually make any difference when we all know they are just wasting £32 million there on stupid career coaches that are a complete and utter waste of time. Meanwhile, Labour warns today of ghost towns developing across the country as new figures show more than 80,000 hospitality, leisure and retail businesses have missed out on government grants to help them tackle the coronavirus crisis. Well, I'm sorry to break it to Labour, but there are already plenty of ghost towns. Take a look at the coastal towns when the summer's not about and they're all struggling and there's literally fuck all going on. These have existed since there was Labour governments as well, so don't talk out on this bullshit about coronavirus, missed grants and obviously the Tory party. As per usual, Labour are moaning about the wrong things rather than holding the government to account for the complete fuck-ups that they do. But let's be honest, most of the important things we want the government called out on, Labour are too shit scared to talk about or back the government's policy because they think it'll help them gain more voters, like the immigration situation we find ourselves in. Because despite the immigration bill, I am still betting that the same amount, if not more people come in next year as they did this year, last year and any year before. Shadow Business Minister Lucy Powell said, unless the government steps up to save the high street, many will become ghost towns, with thousands laid off as a result. Labour is calling on the government to have a back-to-work budget this week, with the focus on protecting and creating jobs. Polling by opinion for the Bright Blue think tank found that more than 2 in 5, 44% of businesses, participating in the coronavirus job retention scheme reported they will have to lay off some, more, or all of their furloughed staff when the scheme comes to a close at the end of October. Then the government needs to take these companies to task for doing that and demand the money fucking back from them if they're laying off staff for something that the government has been paying them not to do. This is our money they are wasting. These firms need to be taken to task. That is for sure. Now, I don't know about you guys, some of you might disagree with this video, but I really don't care at the end of the day. This is our money they are just going to be freely giving out without a care in the world of the fact that we're all going to have to pay it back, claiming, oh, you can spend this £500 gift, which is not really a gift if you have to pay it back in the future through austerity, which let me tell you, will cost you more than £500, that is for sure. But as reported here, the young generation and those gamers could well be very happy with this. Will Rishi Sunak become the next-gen Chancellor with £500 giveaway? On Wednesday, UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak will make an announcement on how the government plans to kickstart the country's economy post-pandemic. And one of the big rumoured initiatives is a £500 giveaway for everyone in the country, plus £250 for children, as we've just been looking at. The hot question then is how the nation would spend such a windfall and what regulations would be put on it. But there's only one answer for the gaming industry in 2020. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Imagine putting £500 in the hands of every gamer in the country in the year of 2 next-gen console launches. The stock problems of the Nintendo Switch in recent months are going to look paltry in comparison, which I would actually have to agree with. There is going to be a hell of a lot of gamers using these to buy these next-gen consoles if they ever pop up. Which, yes, might help the economy briefly, but it's likely only to help the big chain stores, not most of the other high street stores that are not Argos Game or anything like that. Reinforcing what I said about this being a complete waste of time and obviously our money, it is not a gift if you have to pay it back at the end of the day. But as always, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel, and my other social media links are down in the video description if you want to come and support me on Twitter, BitChute, and a variety of other platforms, including my second YouTube channel. As I said, all links are down in the video description.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.